All right, so I've been tooling around with changes just based on a lot of. I actually got someone to challenge me and push me really hard, and I think you're going to be able to enjoy seeing exactly what I'm talking about when I get to those games. But basically, what I learned from that experience was that I really needed to avoid. There's a there's a kind of drift that happens where if you're not playing against good opponents, you start putting in more and more like big splashy cards on the right side of the deck list on the high mana curve side. There's a tendency to want to do that. So you start thinking about, oh well, I could play like a Future Sight and combo it with Sensei's Divining Top, or just on its own and things like that. And it's because your opponents, if you're playing against like just general pop, opponents typically aren't aggressively attacking you and trying to pursue their strategy in an ultra aggressive fashion with a lot of defenses. So you don't have these like really tight games. And what happens is when I end up facing decks where they're really tuned and they play the battle of resources game with me, I start realizing that I need to push the mana curve to the left. I need to get it down towards that 1 and 2 mana range. So for a little while I had taken out land tax and scroll rack, and I had started drifting right again. I've gone ahead and put those back in because in those battles for resources, scroll rack and land tax do really good things. Scroll rack, it does cost you a card in hand, but the increasing card quality is very high. A lot of times the cards in hand, you go down a card to play scroll rack and it doesn't affect the board and it doesn't do anything. So you're already down a card. But it's similar to Mystical Tutor or one of those other cards where, yes, you're down a card, but with scroll rack, what you can do sometimes is, especially in a tight battle, is you might have like Toxic Deluge in your hand, and that's not what the board's about at all. Or you're holding Toxic Deluge, Treachery, Swords to Plowshares, and then you draw scroll rack, and you're like, well, I'm down a card, but I'm up 3 cards because the 3 cards in my hand don't do anything right now, and that's more important to fix that than it is to have 3 cards that are useless plus 1 card that might have been whatever scroll rack might have been. So for that reason, it can actually be really strong. And also, this deck has 10 fetch lands. So with fetch lands, you can have like a scroll rack in the board and nothing in your hand, right? Like maybe you have just like 1 card in hand. So you have scroll rack in play, you have just 1 card in hand and it's no good, it's not useful to you. So you put it back and you draw, oh, there's a fetch land. Well, that's not useful to me, but you sack it, shuffle your deck, and now it's kind of like that fetch land actually has scrying because you've effectively kind of like scryed that card you didn't want to the bottom of your library. You've mixed it into your library. So the next card you draw is a real card. If it's not useful to you, you get to scroll rack it away. And so with just 1 fetch land, you've seen 2 extra cards on the next turn. So it's kind of like every fetch land in your deck suddenly has scrying too. It's a little bit slow, or 1 or 2. It breaks down somewhere in that range. So considering there are 10 fetch lands in here and other shuffle effects as well, that's a lot of scrying that the scroll rack does for you, basically. And I think for that reason, the fact that it goes down a card, and it is an artifact which, of course, works with Mox Opal and Breya, perhaps that's okay. Tax, on the other hand, is just an incredible card against blue. You really need to hit your land drops. You really need to hit your blue mana so that you can fight counter wars effectively. Land tax helps you do that for 3 turns, and your next 3 turns you're going to hit land drops. That's a phenomenal effect. And of course, if you can put the 2 together, well, amazing things happen. Now, some of the other changes that occurred, so I put those back in. Some of the other changes that occurred in that battle was that I realized like it was this Vandal Blast thing, and I may have mentioned it already, but Fragmentize and Vandal Blast are 2 cards you always want in your opening hand. So in other formats where you're not worried about like early Soul Rings and stuff, you really want to draw, like in other formats like say Modern, you really want an opening hand that has Inquisition of Kozilek, Thoughtseize, Duress, something like that, because you really want to stop your opponent from comboing you out from hand and beating you. You're worried about like Storm and such. But in this format, the 1 mana answer cards that you want for your opponent's really good draw, their really good draw is almost always going to involve Mana Crypt or Soul Ring. So the answers you want are 1 mana solutions for that. So if you're playing red or white, here are two cards that answer that, and I think these cards are probably going to end up staying in the deck for that exact reason. Now, if you're playing green, there are other cards you can use. If you're playing black, and you don't have access to these other colors, of course you have to run cards like Thoughtseize and Duress. And if you're playing blue, only mono blue, well, then you're going to have to look around and figure it out. I guess Mental Misstep and cards of that nature make sense, but I don't know, because mono blue doesn't interest me. So every deck, every color, though, is what I'm getting at. Every color does have answers for those drops, and I think it makes a lot of sense to put those answers in the deck, and you want to put the ones that are the strongest and most flexible for whatever it is your deck is trying to do. And for this deck, Fragmentize and Boundless Blast seem to be the key. I'm still running Disenchant. Of course, I want a muddleable target that I can go get, as well as one that I can pick up with Mystical Teachings. And I can't get Fragmentize or Boundless Blast directly with Mystical Teachings. I have to do a tutor loop, teachings into Mystical Tutor into one of these cards, for example. So those are the big changes to the deck. The card that came out, unfortunately, was... the other thing, sorry. Previously, I'd said I didn't want to run Dark Confidant in a deck with Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time. But the thing about it is Dark Confidant is another card that just beats blue outright if they don't have an immediate solution to it. And I put Cavernous Souls back into the deck because I'm running a second card that falls in that category. So you notice a trend here. I'm running Weathered Wayfarer as well. So Weathered Wayfarer, Dark Confidant, Land Tax, these cards are all cards that are extremely good against blue decks because they're very, very cheap and they allow you to generate card advantage and mana advantage. Confidant finds lands pretty quickly. Weathered Wayfarer, that's its specialty. And of course, if you don't already have Cavern of Souls, it can go get that. It can go get Strip Mine. So you want maximum number of these types of cards. Now with Dark Confidant in the deck, that's yet another reason why I wanted to put Scroll back into the deck, because I was worried about the damage I'd be taking from Cruise and Dig, but this will help give me a second, top end rack. It gives me a second, and of course Jace, but second way to work around Confidant's drawback. So I think that makes a ton of sense. Now the card that's not in here that I really want to have in here is Gush. The reason I took Gush out is to put Treachery back into the deck. This is from back in the 1v1 days. But Treachery, as Brian pointed out to me, it just has the ability to immediately have a major impact on a game, turn a losing game into a winning game on the spot. It's incredibly good with Winter Orb. And also lands like Ancient Tomb and Workshop, both of which are, played in here. And so what I end up doing by running Treachery over Gush is I lose the ability to force a land tax activation via Gush, but I gain the ability to flip a game that I'm losing. Gush can do that if it's digging for something that's going to save you, but Gush and Treachery together, picking up lands and then trying to run out of Treachery, I guess it's not the greatest thing. Gush was just the card out of all the cards in here that was the most on the fence as far as when it's good. Because when it's good, it's great. It's like generating mana and drawing you cards. But when it's not good for you, it's just setting you back. It's slowing you down on your development, and that's not, something had to give. I had to pull a card. If I could run a 100th card, it would be Gush. But since I can't, we're stuck at 99. Well, I had to pull something, so there it is. All right, so with all that, let's run to these games. Hopefully, I haven't bored you too much with all the philosophizing about which cards or strategizing about which cards make the most sense in here. And of course, Monastery Mentor ended up coming out. It became land tax. The thing was, as you're going to see very soon, I never tutored for Mentor one time, and in fact, in the entire time it was in the deck, I never actually played it, not one time. But it just wasn't. If I'm not tutoring for a card ever, that should tell you, or it should tell me at least, that the card doesn't belong in the deck. Every card in there needs to be a card that you would fetch under the right circumstances. And Mentor it doesn't ever really fit that bill. Whereas Lantax, which replaced Mentor again, put Lantax back in, well, that's a card I routinely fetch on turn one, draw dependent. So anyhow, all right, so as you can see, I was playing all these games. Now, these changes were not fully implemented during this 120, the date of 120, against Insane Command than they were today in these last two games. I'm going to run through all these games against Insane Command, who's a viewer on the channel, and came packing a deck designed to give me, well, using the design, some of the ideas at least that we've had on here on the channel, and it ended up giving me a really tough time. He broke my losing streak, or winning streak rather. I was on a like 60 or something 70 game winning streak. That's all over. He beat me twice, and then as you can see, we had quite a few battles afterwards. Now, one thing I've always said about me personally, and I think it's actually reflective upon this deck itself, is that I tend to be like the Borg. I adapt to the weapons you use against me, even without changing cards, and they become less effective. Actually, though, I believe it's a function of playing this deck. So when you play a deck like this, which has a very toolboxy approach to it, what will happen is, as you understand the match against your opponent, you'll make better and better choices about what things you're going to get. And as you can see, that's exactly what happened here. And then the win ratio started coming back, approaching closer and closer to that 100% mark again. And that's one of the things I love about this style of deck, is that and to me that's actually evidence that the skill of the player is actually the function that's most critical when playing this deck. It's skill and knowledge of your deck, knowledge of your opponent, of the match you're in, and making the right decisions makes all the difference in the world. So let's start out with a couple games where I don't make the right decisions. Here, as you can see, I still had Gush. So like I said, some of the changes were not implemented, but we'll give it a whirl here. So my opponent's playing Tymna and Thrasios, one of the combos that's definitely hardest for this deck to deal with. He gets an early Enlightened Tutor for Crucible Worlds, which I figured was going to be too slow. No, not so much. Very, very problematic for me here. So I can't strip mine there, so rather I'm going to go ahead and Confidant and hope that my opponent doesn't really have anything. He's got a Vampiric Tutor. So part of the deal is this hand I had was not, and he vamps for, I'm fairly certain for strip mine. Plays his Tymna, and he's going to be able to, I can draw cards off Confidant, but my opponent's going to be able to potentially draw cards off Tymna. I could plow here, but then he just replays Tymna. I'm not sure how much sense that makes. He ends up Mystical Tutoring for Abrupt Decay, which is obviously crushes my Confidant hopes and dreams, but it does allow me to kill the Tymna here without him actually replaying it this turn. So I get to stall a little bit. And my opponent has no cards in hand, but he's just going to continuously strip mine me. And if I don't draw artifact, like if I could draw my own Mana Crypt here, I would probably be able to get back into this game. But without something like that, I'm really running out of time. I do have two lands that that I can sack in response to his strip mine for value. But unfortunately, my opponent correctly. So what I was really hoping is that he would make the wrong play. I was hoping he would try to strip the Flooded Strand just to get off the board, or that he wouldn't strip mine at all. Since both of my lands would provide me with some kind of value, he would decide, well, I don't want to strip mine, right? An untapped strip mine. And if he had made that mistake, and it would have been a mistake 100%, then I would have, on this turn, I would have been able to play a land and fabricate into a crypt, or play a land and cast Vedalken Shackles, probably fabricating for a crypt. But either way, I might have had a chance to get back in the game, because by then it would have been too late for my opponent could, of course, have strip mined and strip mined again, but I'd still be at 3 mana after that whole sequence, and I would have maybe had a chance. But instead, he played perfectly. He strip mined my strip mine. I stripped back his Underground, but who cares, right? He's got a Crucible. He's going to get it back. And now there's no way I can get up to 3 mana here. Even if I play a land for mana drain, he's just going to strip mine my island again. And this game's over. So I am crushed, and we move on to the second game now. Again, still trying to figure it out. I was trying to decide what I could have done differently that game, and the answer is I should have mulliganed. The hand just wasn't fast enough, wasn't defensive. It just didn't have anything. So this time I mulligan, and I'm keeping, yet again, a hand that just doesn't have anything. But it does have ponder, and I'm hoping that that's going to, be enough to get me there. So I've got a really decent start here, but my opponent does as well, and it gets real bad for me real fast with the Sylvan Library. So Sylvan Library is just, it's basically my, I hate to put it this way, but basically Sylvan Library on turn 2 or 3 like this early is 1 green, you win the game. If your opponent doesn't, if it's not answered immediately, because what's going to happen now is my opponent gets to Ancestral Recall every turn for the next 3 or 4 turns, and there's just no way to beat that kind of card advantage. But I'm certainly gonna, I'm gonna try. It's just futile trying, right? So I'm gonna go for Tezzeret here. Tezzeret lets me get Crucible down. I would like to get Jason to play, but even if I played Jason, bounces Chaga Tree Speaker, I don't see that being as good as developing here, so that I can try to keep, I'm trying to catch up on the mana development side, and then I can worry about the card advantage side in a moment. Also, if I can get a land down and play my commander, then Tezzeret can fetch Clamp, and I can recover plenty of cards that way. Problem is, so he uses Thrasios and reveals Cyclonic Rift. It's just getting fairly hopeless fairly quickly here. What I'd really like, of course, is a way to find Toxic Deluge. Opponent riffs a Mox. This is actually a misplay on his part, and does give me a bit of a chance, because I'm able to at least get Shackles going here. And again, I'm still behind on the Jace, but my thought on Shackles here was I can't really, it protects Tezzeret a little bit, and I just can't afford, effectively he wasted the Rift, and I can't afford for him to continuously use Thrasios, especially not with Sylvan Library allowing him to go get whatever the heck he wants. So my best hope here is just is that I can just hold the line long enough. When he twists there, I had a good chance where I could win the game off of him twisting into a counterspell for me. That, alas, is not what happens, and my opponent gets his Paradox Engine, which is a combo for him. He gets it into play, so now I at least have a better understanding of what I'm facing. Obviously, like, if I get a turn, it seems pretty apparent that I could win from here, because I can Mind Twist my opponent, but he's starting to combo me off, and yeah, I just end up, he reveals, I can't remember what he reveals. Oh, he reveals Abrupt Decay. So he brings to light for Abrupt Decay. So what's going to happen there is he's going to Abrupt Decay. He gets a bunch of mana. He's going to Abrupt Decay the Shackles. I can't counter that. He gets even more mana. Then he activates Thrasios over and over. And every time he hits a card that he can play, he gets all of his mana back. So I'm going to be sitting here while my opponent just continuously uses Thrasios again and again and again and again. And effectively, he's going to, and at some point, somewhere in there, he'll be drawing artifact mana as well, which will just further make it easy for him to play his next card. And so my opponent is going to draw his whole deck and kill me. How he kills me is not worth sticking around to see. So there's our first 2 games. So now I understand, okay, I've got to, he's playing combo. I have to have fast hands. I've got to have disruption. I'm going to have to mulligan more aggressively, so let's play. Here, however, I don't have disruption, but I do have, I'm going second, so it's every hand is down to dice roll. But I've got Weathered Wayfarer, and I think Weathered Wayfarer provides me the ability to get disruption. And I have Copy Artifact to keep up with a fast draw. So, and then I also have Stoneforge to get disruption. Okay, so he plays a second land here. He was trying to play around Wayfarer for a minute, but fetch lands make it very hard to do that. So I'm able to go ahead and just go get a Wasteland right away. I can again get a Strip Mine as well down the road if I want to, but I knew I was going to kill Underground Sea, and I wanted the ability to possibly even draw a Strip Mine, so it made more sense for me to just get Waste now and Strip later. Alright, so speaking of disruption, I'm going to go get Sword. Opponent gets a Dimir Signet on board, but is not giving me the ability to get Strip Mine or something along those lines. And yes, son? Very cool, son. I like the monster truck. All right, sorry. There's a good night, son. I love you. All right, so apologies for that, but as you can see, so what's happening is I'm trying to craft a board position where my opponent's suppressed on mana and I can start hitting him with the Sword of Feast and Famine. He does have, however, a blue creature out that he can block with. So this isn't going to be easy to get through, and as a result, I end up going for the fetch it, strip mine, and disrupt now, and get the sword through in a moment. Like that's the long-term strategy, but for the moment, I've got to push it. So my opponent is imprinting Muddle the Mixture, using Preordain, getting a Jason in play. Like, it's by no means, this is not a good situation for me, but thanks to Breya, I can actually, and having a land there, I'm able to actually get the Jace off the table immediately. So go ahead and do that. And we're back to semi-board parity, at least for now. All right, so he fabricates for a mana crypt and gets even more mana into play. I, on the other hand, go for a Tezzeret pre-combat, and he has a counterspell. A bit unfortunate, but I'm going to swing in with Breya. Get a little bit of damage. If he plays a land, then I can use Wayfarer. But he is, wisely avoiding that. Gets in with Timna, which I kind of expected, and I end up deciding that sitting on Wayfarer is not necessarily great for me here. So he uses Thrasios, revealing a land, I believe, there, actually. No, he reveals Crucible Worlds. He's got Crucible in his hand. So I'm going to go ahead and equip and send. Because he had to attack with 2 creatures to get a card in his hand, he lost the ability to block because pro-black. So now I can go ahead and Teachings into a Dig Through Time. And I know that the last card in my hand is Crucible, so if I'm cautious here, I can stop whatever he might try to do. Of course, he's got Thrasios available, but... And then he makes an inexplicable... I think this was a misplay. I can't imagine it wouldn't have been a misplay. He sends in with both of his guys, but I'm able to just block the one so that he loses the capability to pay the life after combat. Now, in response to Crucible, I'm going to go ahead and dig. I'm going to pause for a second. Whenever you dig through time, by the way, always, if it's not obvious already, always exile. First of all, always exile counterspells. Secondly, try to leave a fetch land and a strip mine, but if you can only leave one, leave the strip mine. And always try to leave cards that you would like to be able to replay on a Yawgmoth's Will. So what I did was I left Teachings because it's already replayable. Cheap 1 casting cost cards, a strip mine, and a Tezzeret, all of which would be really good to play on a Yawgmoth's Will. So that's just a little something I wanted to point out. Every decision should be a mindful one, including which cards you exiles would dig through time. So he's still got a Crucible on the stack, and with Crucible on the stack and a Dig Through Time on the stack, my opponent actually has no play in response to this dig. He was looking for one, and he found himself a Verdant Catacombs rather than anything useful. So knowing I'm going to dig into 2 cards and be hitting him with the sorted up creature, he just decides to go ahead and scoop, and we move on to the next game. Hard to say if it was premature, but the fact that he was going to have no cards in hand, and I have not only a counterspell, but when I hit him with the sword, the Mystical Teachings is basically free, or cheap, and so I'm able to I can get in a situation where I'm going to counterlock my opponent there, and so he's been around the block long enough to realize that the game was over, so he just goes ahead and packs it in, and we move on to the next game. Alright, so again, a hand that isn't incredibly fast, but has the tools to deal with a hand that is, and wow, is that draw on his side incredibly fast. Now I have to play Urborg here because he played a Wasteland, and I can't afford the Fountain to get wasted, and I drew Cavern of Souls for the Confidant, but it's a real bummer because I'm giving my opponent black, which I did not want to do. So he goes for an early Paradox Engine, which gives me some time, and because he played the engine there, and I'm quite concerned about what that could imply, I'm going to go for, instead of trying to kill the engine, I'm going to go for Crypt and try to take the cards out of his hand, as many as I can, which at this time is 3. So I get 75% of his hand. And I get Draga, Tree Speaker, Deluge, and Enlightened Tutor. Not incredibly good, but not horrible considering Enlightened Tutor with that City of Brass is a problem. And my opponent is not, he's missing land, so he's not actually using his Wasteland. So I go for an Impulse, and because he's worried about trying to keep me pinned, he forces it, and that allows me to play it. Also, because he wanted to untap his Mana Vault, he was probably, I think he mentioned he was going to force the will anything I did, so you know, because he needed to untap Vault there so he can get Timna down and try to do some work with that, which was probably the other reason why the Wasteland hasn't fired. And as it turns out for him, that was actually good, because if he had not force willed the Impulse, if he'd waited for my next card, Confidant was uncounterable. He knew I had the Cavern, but he didn't know I had the Confidant. So anyway, the problem for him though is that because he's been playing because of the Mind Twist constraining his options, and because he's been having to work to untap his cards, he does not. I've had plenty of time to get that Breya down, and so I'm able to play a Grim Monolith and go ahead and kill his commander. And I play a Grim there only because I want to keep the Thopter around, because I want to try to pressure my opponent as much as possible before this game ends, because he does have now Thrasios and Paradox Engine running. He reveals a Underground Sea there, fortunately, not a spell to untap all of his cards. And that does give me some time to kill that thing with Breya, potentially. So I was willing to kill the Grim Monolith and keep a Thopter, because I felt like 1 point of damage per turn could end up meaning something. And I wanted to be able to also trump block if it comes down to that down the road, due to the fact that my opponent's playing Timna. So he's trying to make a play here, and I believe it's he's playing an Ancestral, or are we just gonna bug out? What's going on here? No? Okay. Oh yeah, and he was mentioning that he had actually intentionally killed my red mana to try to prevent me from getting up to Breya mana, but wasn't able. He thought about doing it, but as it turns out, of course, it didn't matter in the end. I think we are bugging out, but basically, as you can see from here, I'm fine. I get to if I like, I can whir into stealing Thrasios, which is, I'm pretty sure what I did. I whirred into oh no, maybe not. I think he wastelanded me here, but I ended up killing Thrasios regardless. I mean I may have had to sack the Thopter in the Crypt or something like that, but yeah, I ended up killing Thrasios, and then I think I found a way to kill Paradox Engine or Worn Power Stone, and then from there my opponent was just choking on mana, and I was able to Dark Confidant. I mentioned earlier that Dark Confidant, beats blue decks, and that's exactly what happened in that game. I was able to just ride it all the way home to victory. So very glad that Brian had said, don't worry about the life, play the card. So anyway. All right. Oh, I guess it's always going to be Thrasios and Timna, so I don't need to keep bringing up the commanders. So here's a great hand, mainly because the hand has early development and a way to kill an artifact or enchantment. So I preordain, my opponent ponders. This is all good for me. This is exactly what I want. Nothing going on early, because it gives me time to go ahead and develop really rapidly with Demonic Tutor and Mana Crypt Talisman Pass. Okay, so now I've got the ability to play a Gilded Lotus. Of course, it depends on what he does. If he would like to play Sylvan Library, then I Gilded Lotus, disenchanted on the spot, kind of a thing. He does not. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to do, and I think I go for Winter Orb here because I have Muddle to make sure that it hits, and then I have Disenchant to make sure that he can't work around it too easily, along with my commander, of course, if he tries to do it with creatures like that one. So, okay. Mana Drain off the top was real nice there. Kind of changes my mind on what I'm going to do. I decide, instead of going Commander, kill your Cobra, I'm going to go Gilded Lotus. I leave Disenchant up so that if my opponent were to play, say, Mana Crypt into a big spell, I could drain and Disenchant this turn, using the Scrubland and the Lotus. So he does get a Trinket Mage here. And trinkets for fairly certain, yeah, Mana Crypt. Okay. Always the Crypt is, or basically always. Luckily, so I drew a Wasteland there, which was really nice. My opponent has to Mystical Tutor in response, goes and gets Cyclonic Rift. Because he has Rift, I know not to play my commander here, so I'm just going to wait. There's the Crypt that we knew about. Timna is going to come into play, and I'm going to let it happen because he's going to draw a card, yes, but then I'm going to play my commander and he gets no cards. Okay, so end of his turn, I'm going to go ahead and try to disenchant that Crypt. It happens. Excellent. And now I can go for my commander plus. So first I'm going to clear my my main phase, but I'm going to go for my commander plus I can mana drain his Rift. So I was thinking about immediately sacking, but then I realized 3 blockers, 3 attackers. This is fine. I don't need to kill anything. I know he's got Cobra and he's getting a lot of mana off of it. I'm going to get rid of it eventually, but right now I'm in no rush and I don't want to have to. I don't want my opponent to be able to draw any extra cards. All right, so at the end of his turn, yes, now I do want the Lotus Cobra gone, forcing him to make his play if he's going to do it. And in response, I decide instead of he tries to bounce the Gilded Lotus. So instead of mana draining it, I just sack the Gilded Lotus and the Crypt and kill his Lotus Cobra. So now I'm sitting on a mana drain with Thran Dynamo in my hand, but I have a much better board position than my opponent. And this is fine. I can play a little draw go for a bit. I could have mana drained to keep the Gilded Lotus on the board, but then I lost my only defense against whatever nastiness he might be trying to do. And I'm guessing we're going to bug out. I don't think that my opponent would have tapped a bunch of mana here. Yeah, we're bugged. Yep, no source. But basically what actually happened was he tried to make a play and I actually just counterspelled it, I think, or mana drained. I can't remember. But then I'm able to Stoneforge and get Sword running, and then I mean, none of what you're seeing there actually happened, but okay. So which game was that? So this is 5:38. I'm going to have to actually name the time so that I can go back and figure out which one we haven't seen yet. So you can see these games are very, very close. This is the 5:38 game. And we played for hours. So hopefully you enjoy this sort of thing, because I certainly did. And this is a nice contrast, like I said, to my last video, where my opponents weren't coming with, I mean, maybe they had Toon decks, maybe they didn't, but it wasn't like they all did. Quite a few of them did not. Only a tiny sprinkle of them did, which is exactly how it goes throughout the day. Whereas in this case, every game is against a Toon deck. Now, I've kept a very risky hand on the basis of Crypt, Confluence, Factor Fiction, Force of Will, and having Vandal Blast as well. But I'm not hitting mana. So if I don't find mana soon, or if my opponent finds Wasteland soon, like either of those scenarios is really, really poor for me. So he's going to be able to Trinket into a Crypt or Soul Ring, and I'm going to let it go because I have Vandal Blast and I do not want to Force of Will if I can Vandal Blast. Oh, finally. Thank goodness. Okay. So it gets a top deck. Now, here's the thing. My opponent's down to 4 cards in hand. And whatever play he makes, I could potentially mana drain followed by Vandal Blast. So I'm going to let him have the mana because I want him to run a big spell into this mana drain and power me up. So I'm actually hoping this is actually going to benefit me rather than be a drawback. And he runs out a giant Mind Twist. This is exactly what I wanted. So let's mana drain that. He has Force of Will. Oh, goodness. I'm going to have to force back. And I had to think real hard about what to throw away. I actually threw away Counterspell because I'm intending to have a big turn here, which means I'm not going to be able to muck around with holding a Counterspell. All right, so he makes a split that I don't quite agree with, but it ends up favoring me quite nicely. I'm going to be able to get Tezzeret into play. I'm going to fetch for Shackles, take his guy and pass. And the reason I went for Shackles here is that his 2 biggest threats right now that I know of are his commanders, and neither of them work very well when there's a Shackles in play. So he gets, I don't know if he ripped it, if it was a top deck or what, if he was sandbagging it, but he's able to Demonic Tutor and then he's topping afterwards. But still, I mean, one of the better cards you could get early on would be Soul Ring here, and of course I'm holding Vandal Blast, and very quickly, if my opponent has nothing else, I'm going to be able to play my commander, and if my opponent doesn't stop the commander, then I can immediately Tezzeret for 1, get Skull Clamp, and just start drawing like a fiend, and at that point the game's over. So I think realizing that, yeah, he looks at the top of his library and realizes that he doesn't have it. It's game over, and so we just move on to the next game there. But I thought that was a really interesting game, considering I was able to stop a Mind Twist, a Force-of-Willed Mind Twist, precisely because I made the choice to let my opponent have his mana rather than not. So anyway, we'll go for this 549 game. And if you noticed, like, I think the last one was 548 and then 549. These games are boom, 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 rapid fire sometimes, where you're just like, you know, guns blazing, like, and amazing things happen at a very rapid clip. So anyway, in this game, I decided to keep because I don't have early defenses against, and I tuck the Mox, by the way, because I'm figuring in a turn I won't need it. So I don't have early defenses against Soul Ring, but I do have early defenses against what he might play with a Soul Ring. And I also have a solution to his commander. And so here he's got and the other reason I kept was because I had a lot of mana. So here he's got a double strip/wasteland draw, which is exactly why I wanted to tuck, by the way, the Mox, because what I just want to hit is more and more lands. So now he's able to charge up his Jiraga, which it definitely makes me nervous because he could potentially have the mana to make multiple plays in a single turn, and I certainly don't want that. But so he goes for Walking Ballista here, and I actually, do I mana drain this? I think I do, only because it's going to allow me to get Dak Faden down, I think. What was the thought process here? Oh, Deluge, that's right. I wanted to clear the Tree Speaker off. He missed a land drop. And so because he missed a land drop, I was trying to pinch his mana. And holding the Fragmentize and Dak Faden both, I felt like it was okay if my opponent was able to use artifact mana to get back in the game. So it was kind of like reading. I had a read on my opponent's hand and board state, and it all paid off when he played that Crucible there, as you can see. Having Impulse for the Dak Faden early, and then I set him up here, and he walked into what amounted to a trap. Although I didn't really know exactly what, I had baited the trap, but I didn't know exactly what was going to fall in. I didn't realize it was going to be my good fortune to steal a Crucible of Worlds. But when I did, and I'm able to get Breya mana into play. Now, of course, Trinket Mage can go get Clamp again, so yet again I can quickly refill my hand off a Trinket Mage, but also every land I draw, I can throw away lands with Dak Faden now because I have the Dak Crucible combo where you throw away lands and then replay them from your graveyard. And generally speaking, a Crucible in a active Crucible in a control battle is almost always a win for the person who controls it. So moving into the next game, it's his turn to get a little bit of vengeance, and as you'll see. So I keep a very strong, like, this is an incredible hand against another control deck, right? It's got multiple counters, plenty of mana, and the ability to potentially force out a Necropotence and just win the game with it. I drew Shackles, but also it has Brainstorm to fix it. So this looks like a hand that I just can't lose with, honestly. So I'm getting extra cards here. No, Weathered Wayfarer kind of changes things. Weathered Wayfarer will allow me to go get Urborg. So I absolutely want to get Weathered Wayfarer into play. But what I'm going to do first is Brainstorm and try to I go ahead and let his mana drain resolve and play my Weathered Wayfarer. I was hoping to Brainstorm and tuck away the Shackles, but then again, Shackles, as I mentioned before, is quite good against him as well. So here's a major problem, though. Okay, so I'm gonna So I'm going to describe what just happened because it's pretty important. I had 2 fetch lands in play, and in my head I'm thinking I need to set up for Necropotence. So I was leaning towards going and getting black mana so that I would be set up for Necropotence. But what I wasn't thinking at the time was that I didn't need to do that. What I needed to do was hedge my bets against Wasteland by getting 2 white sources. And the reason is that I can play Necropotence off of an active Weathered Wayfarer. As mentioned earlier, Urborg is in the deck. So if I'd had 2 blue-white duels here, I just win the game right here. Like right now, with an active white, I can go get I could go get Workshop and play Shackles Workshop, and then immediately on the next turn I could go get Urborg, or I could have set myself up with I could have wastelanded him first and then strip mined or something along those lines. Anyway, what's going to happen, and I'll save you time. Well, I'm going to get mind twisted, but what actually happens, this actually doesn't matter. All that matters is I didn't get 2 white sources, and I cannot ever draw one. I just never draw one, and I don't get to play. I basically killed myself by a poor choice. And his deck is way too good for me to make bad decisions and survive. And he's easily able to crush me and make me pay for that. So, all right. So now after having been on a nice little winning streak, getting a little sloppy, I get back to focusing on trying to win. And we play 5 more sets, 5 more rounds, and you'll see that things work out quite nicely from there. So I haven't actually drawn like a nutty, like I haven't drawn an OP draw against him. I haven't done anything crazy with soul rings and all that good stuff at all. And so at some point, like he's getting his mana vaults and all this insanity. And at some point it's got to turn, right? Like at some point I've got to be the one to get the good luck. And so we'll see. But for now, I'm going to Demonic Tutor and go get a Mana Crypt. I'm going to do it the hard way. Alright, so he's got a great draw, except his color is a little bit weak until he plays that Dimer Signet. Now it's fairly well fixed. Fortunately, the best he does there is gets his commander down, and that's not too bad because I have this Trinket Mage. And because I'm going with the Trinket Mage as a defender, I decide I'm going to go get Skull Clamp, and instead of putting... Like, I don't want to trade with his commander unless I'm going to draw some cards, because he can just replay his commander. He's got tons of mana. But by doing it this way, I also set myself up for this turn, in which I get Breya down, and now I can draw 4 cards. So it's funny because in the past, I don't think I even played Skull Clamp, and I've since realized it's an incredibly important tool in this deck. Absolutely a card that I would keep into the deck, and definitely never getting cut. So anyway, he... picks up a Felwar Stone off his commander's activation, then finds himself a Demonic Tutor. This might not be good. Blow. There's all 4 cards I drew off the Clamp, and he nailed the Yawgmoth's Will too. But I topped that Gush. This is where I'm going to really miss Gush. Look at that. 4 cards back in my hand. I get Tezzeret down, Shackles his guy, smash for some damage, and pass. Incredibly good top deck there. Alright, so he's going to play that Felwar he picked up earlier, play a Tree Speaker, level it up. He's got Tymna, but the card I stole was Thrasios. This is a great job of blocking Tymna and turning it off. Now I get to clone my Vedalken Shackles and steal his Tymna. I think we're not... I think we're bugging out here, but basically I cloned Shackles, or copy Artifact Shackles, and steal Tymna here, so that now... I actually get the full value of playing my... I'm basically playing both of our decks at this point because I have all 3 commanders in play and they're all working for me. And I think he scoops it up pretty quickly at that point. Alright, so that was a 601. Pretty nice to beat a Mind Twist. And that insane 4 mana on turn 2 start that my opponent had. Alright. Now it's my turn to do some insane stuff, so let's get cooking. Alright, so first turn I get Shackles. Sorry, I get to Demonic Tutor for Soul Ring, play Crypt, and play Soul Ring Alpha, and then play Shackles, Mox Opal turn 2, I get to play Ready with like 4 mana floating. Now all I want to draw is yet again Skull Clamp with this Ready going. My opponent Abrupt Decays Ready, so I guess oh well. Instead I'm going to hardcast Gush, play a land and pass, drawing Force of Will as my other card. He goes for Search for Tomorrow. I'm not going to mana leak that. He goes for a Vault, and I make the mistake of not mana leaking that. I should have leaked the Vault, because it's very hard to mana leak after a Vault is in play. On the other hand, it did keep an extra blue card in my hand, so I am able to play Breya here with a fair amount of security. But, you know, had I countered the Vault, it's unlikely he could make... I mean, he's got 7, 8 mana. You can make a gigantic play or a series of plays here. Also, I let Paradox Engine come down here. That was another huge error. And basically, at this point, my opponent could easily win the game if I don't find a solution really fast. Because if he gets his commander down, I am totally hosed. I do have at least Shackles and Breya active to defend myself against his commander, but it's a rough situation, and it could have been all prevented by stopping the Paradox Engine, I suppose. We'll see, though. So he goes for Bring to Light, and from here, with the untap effect on the stack, I'm going to Force a Will before he gets his mana back. That way, if he had some kind of counter, I could have mana leaked it. Instead, he's going to go for a Jace, which I cannot stop. He's got 5 mana floating and a ton of mana to untap. Gets to draw extra cards. Plays a Ponder, now gets more mana back. It's a good thing none of his mana actually produces color, or this would probably be impossible. He's got 11 mana floating, and then his pool empties. Yes. I'm going to go ahead and just kill Jace right away. No, I was thinking about killing Jace right away. I'm sorry. But instead what I do is I sack the Defender and the Vedalken Shackles, and I do 3 face. And the reason is I'm going to attack for 6, which takes him to 12, and then 2, 4, 6, 8. I've got 8 artifacts, which is a grand total of 4 times 3, which is 12. So I can actually do lethal with, so he's dead on board. So that was the thought process there. So moving on, that was 615 and 626. We'll start this next one. I think these matches are super interesting, and I really enjoy, like, this is, I love high-level Magic, and that's exactly what this is here. So anyway, I mulligan into a very strong hand again. All the good stuff, including a disenchant to deal with an early threat. I decided, because I know he's got Time Twister in his deck, I'm going to play Mox Opal here, and of course he's got Mana Drain, Mind Twist as well. Even though I don't generally like to telegraph my Opal, because it gives them incentive to kill artifacts, and it also gives them too much information. But here I'm okay with it. Unfortunately, I'm not drawing a island, but I am able to kill a Sylvan Library. Thank goodness. I get a copy artifact. Now that's going to turn on Mox Opal and make that Dig Through Time suddenly a lot stronger. It also means I can cast Yawgmoth's Will if I need to. So if he's able to play an artifact, like if he finds a Soul Ring, I can will into Marshflat's Disenchant, which would be great. So because of that, I want to Dig Through Time, but I don't want to exile my graveyard, and my deck just delivers. Here, have an Ancient Tomb. No, you don't have to remove anything. Wonderful. All right, so Mox Diamond, there's a target, and he goes for Crucible. So in response, because I don't want to mana drain this, I really want to dig here because it's the most efficient use of my mana. So what I'm going to do is dig, and I'm going to try to find a blue spell I can force with, plus another card that I want to keep. And I find Cruise and Treachery. So I'm going to force with Treachery, because we're getting past that part of the game. Then Will, and I actually realized after the Will, I could actually have dug through time there had I wanted to, but I felt like Disruption was more important because I have the Cruise. And so now I'm able to cruise as well. So we'll go ahead and just grab some cards here. Figuring out the best way to do this. And I decided to cruise using white mana rather than black, because if I draw a Necro, I can actually play the Badlands and cast it right away. Alright, so I'm just getting a little bit flooded here, so instead I'm going to go for Coalition Relic. My opponent Enlightened Tutors in response for a Mana Crypt. Almost always the correct card. I go ahead and Crucible. Now, at this time, I don't think I had Scroll Rack in the deck, but you can see here's a perfect scenario where I would love to rip a Scroll Rack. When it goes for Jace. Even though I could kill it with my commander, I just Mana Drain here because just don't want it on the board at all. And I might draw something more useful, and I do. I find Muddle, so again, can't go get Scroll Rack here, but I can get Demonic Tutor, so we'll do that and tutor into Dak Faden for some more mana disruption, and at this point he's had enough. So Dak Faden, again, Dak Faden Crucible is just another one of those combos in the deck that, much like Scroll Rack Tax, it's two cards that do good things generally on their own, but together create a nearly unbeatable situation where you're just basically Dak Faden is just zero draw two cards once you have some lands to throw away and continuously hitting your land drops afterwards. It's just way too good. So he goes ahead and packs it in, but I was going to Dak away the Relic first over the Crypt. So take the Relic, plus up, and then take the Crypt. And then from there, of course, at some point get my commander in play, and then who knows what I find with Dak Faden. So yeah. So he scoops, and we move into the next game, and we're starting to run out of time, but we did have this excellent battle here. The whole thing was incredibly enjoyable. All right, so not a broken hand, but a very strong one. We're going to get a nice start off. Hopefully no disruption from my opponent. Otherwise, this starts to look like trouble. He Imperial Seals first. I'm going to go ahead and vamp right away. I don't know what he sealed for, but he did it. He is down on cards. And because I'm concerned, I don't have any defenses here. I'm actually going to hit him with a twist for 3, and I get Chrome Mox Liliana Strip Mine. Holy smokes, was that ever a good mind twist. Opponent Abrupt Decays the Mox Diamond. Luckily I top deck a land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm 1 mana away from treasure cruising, and he's got a Trinket Mage. Not good, but hopefully, okay, well, there's 1 mana down the road. So I'm trying to figure out how to do this. So I end up putting away Shackles, and I put away Deluge. I feel a little bit bad about this because I'm worried about his commander hitting me and him drawing a card, but I do have Confidant here. So we're going to kind of come out even in the exchange, and any land that produces color at this point will allow me to cast Breya and stop him from getting his card engine, like keeping his card engine running. Meanwhile, I have both Confidant and Cruise, so I'm going to leave it alone, hoping to draw land off the next 2. He finds a Soul Ring, I find Will, and Opal doesn't quite do it, but I can Will. So I'm going to Will, and Will allows me to play a land, Brainstorm, finding mana, thankfully, playing the Mox Diamond, and then casting a Mind Twist to take away whatever the card was he drew. He then sends in both guys, and I trade the Confidant for his commander so he doesn't get a card this turn. And now I've successfully stalled about long enough to where I can cruise and then see what my options are. And it turns out what I decide I'm going to do is take out his Soul Ring, continue to suppress his mana, get the Sword of Feast and Famine on the board. He shouldn't be able to play his commander and draw there, so that was the thinking. Now I can finally get Breya down. Now I know he tutored, so he's going to have almost certainly a mana drain there, but it allowed me to Swords to Plowshares his other guy. And while there's some risk here, he's going to get his commander down. He only gets to draw 1 card, and if this isn't a counter, then I would be able to play my commander. But it's better than that situation. When I draw Treachery off the top, I get to steal his guy, untap my lands. So now I've got Timna running, and I get Breya down. Plus I've got a sword going. He can't really play his other commander because I'm going to kill it with Breya. He does anyway because he's digging for cards and finds himself a land. So he's dug himself out of the mana denial hole that I had put him in. But I go ahead and kill off one of his guys, leaving a Thopter, equipping my Thopter with the sword here, smashing in with everything but Timna. And now I get to float some mana, I thought I was going to get to draw the card actually before. I didn't realize it was like the way that timing was going to work out. It wasn't going to work properly, but that's all right because it finds me a Fact or Fiction, and Fact or Fiction finds me Dig Through Time and Mystical, and yeah, my opponent has no cards in hand, so he just scoops it up. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Like the mind twist, I think, was incredibly, like, just making that call. I feel like was really important because of the fact that it took out, well, Chromox Liliana Strip Mine. That combination of cards right there probably would have just won the game for him. So those were, I don't know what else exactly he had in his hand because I'd have to go back and reconstruct it from the plays that followed. But surely I hit, if not the best 3 cards in his hand, really close. And so that was a very lucky play. But if I'd sat back, I would have certainly lost to those 3 cards right there. Anyway, for our last game, I get a nut draw here. Well, it is if my opponent doesn't kill Soul Ring or Wasteland the Badlands, or kill my Weathered Wayfarer. There's a lot of things that can go wrong here, but there's a lot that can go right, including top decking a Scrubland. So I decide I'm going to go for a Lantern, Wayfarer, hold the Scrub. If the Wayfarer doesn't die, then I get to use it if he plays a land. If he doesn't play a land, then I get to play Gilded Lotus. But look at his disruption. That was a gorgeous, like, what a great turn for him. Extremely well played, bouncing my land, and my artifact mana, and strip mining me. But that's just what happens in these battles. But fortunately, I'm able to get the Lantern back down, and he's got a Sylvan, but I've got a Mystical Tutor. So I'm going to go deal with that right now with a Fragmentize. And that, because Fragmentize is 1 mana, it allows me to actually play Crucible and get my land back out. At this point, I could either get a land with Wayfarer or get a land with Crucible. So I'll take the guaranteed land drop over the possible. And I can always Wayfarer later, so I can get Lotus down now. He's got tons of mana, but he's down to only 2 cards in hand. I'm in a similar boat, but I am in a better position overall. And he runs out of Dig, and I can't do anything about that. So suddenly, I expect my board position got a little bit worse. Still, the Weathered Wayfarer is really putting pressure on him to not play lands, and that's pretty punishing. I think we might bug out here. Oh, that's going to be a real shame if we do. Yeah, because on this turn I'm able to it's a bug game, isn't it? I don't know, we'll see. I'm able to dig, right? Okay, well, hopefully it continues. And I don't get exactly what I want, but I do get Copy Artifact, which gets me yet another Gilded Lotus. So I think, no, this game's surely bugged. How disappointing. This was actually one of the better games. Yeah, I'm fairly certain that I copied the Lotus there, and then I'm able to brainstorm. But I don't know what happened anymore. I don't actually remember. That's really disappointing. Well, unfortunately, Magic Online's just like that. So that was all the games against Insane Command. I think they were pretty insane games actually, and a lot of fun. I think we'd played earlier, and he may have got some wins as well. Yeah, he'd gotten 2 wins, and then I got 2 wins. So we broke even, and then he came back with a vengeance, and we played pretty hardcore. So yeah, so that's the grand total. So plus 2 more wins for him earlier in total, picking up 5 victories against me, which was pretty awesome, and really helped me to tune this deck a little bit further, I think. All right, so after tuning it, played some games today. I don't have a lot of those, but I'll spin through those as well, just so you can see how things worked, and also because I think these were actually pretty good. So, all right. So I had a mulligan my first hand, and I'm playing against Irosis, got a victory. Unfortunately, he's not really a good. I don't care much for this creature. It doesn't actually affect the. It doesn't get you cards, and it doesn't get you mana. And cards that don't do one or the other, I don't think really belong as your commander. My opponent's deck is good, but I think his choice of commanders leaves something to be desired. So anyway, so he gets a first turn top. I've got I get to do, like, thanks to Brainstorm, I get to do some really good early development. But he's got Mind Stone, and And I don't really have anything too great here. I do play the Shackles off the Vault and Transmute a Muddle the Mixture, mainly because I wanted to get my Mox Opal on board for Stoneforge. And I get Stoneforge because, again, empty hand, I want to refill it, I want to get clamps. So I'm going to go ahead and waste the plateau and buy a little bit of time here, hopefully. But I really don't have a lot going on, and my board position is pretty fragile right now. At least I have Deluge. Now, I end up regretting I didn't put Deluge back with the Brainstorm because, again, not knowing what my opponent's playing, I assumed based on the aggressive nature of his commander that he was going to be playing a lot of Weenie Rush type stuff. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and Stoneforge here and then Preordain afterwards because I don't want to, if I'm going to strike cards to the top of my library, I want it to be after shuffling my library and not before. So we'll go ahead and Preordain. Looking for land. I don't find any. I had K command in here. Colligan's command's out. It was just, this game reminded me of exactly why. It'd be nice, but it's not great. So he's got Plow, which is very unfortunate, and then Dust Bowl. So I'm in big trouble. Luckily, I kept Impulse. I had put the K command on top, thinking that I might use it to kill a Mind Stone. But when he starts using Dust Bowl, I end up realizing that's going to be too slow. So I Impulse during upkeep to get past it. Kind of wasting my Preordain a little bit there. All right, he's going to continuously hammer my lands. He gets a Crypt so that to ensure that he can, and he gets an Authority of the Consuls, which causes my stuff to enter tapped creatures, but not too big of a deal there. The main problem here is repeated Dust Bowling me. Also, he's got the gorgeous plains. I think that plains right there is probably the best picture on any plains in the game. Are pretty close to it, at least from my perspective. Luckily, though, I was able to draw a land. So because I found Ancient Tomb into Lantern and then a land, I actually get out from under the Dust Bowl long enough to get my commander, and I've got the Skull Clamp ready to go. So if he doesn't kill my guys or the clamp or the board or something, I'm going to be able to recover here, and he's not able to do that. So he's peeking with top. So I'm going to go ahead and smash first. We'll get the full damage in. Now I'm looking at his commander thinking, do I need to leave a flyer back to block? And then I think, no, drawing 2 extra cards is far more important. Even if he does get threshold or whatever it is, I don't want to, I've got to worry about time here. So anyway, I find myself an Enlightened Tutor, and I use the Enlightened Tutor to go get a Soul Ring and ponder it into my hand, so I can get the Soul Ring on board right away, and then that way my commander's still active, plus I've got the Shackles available, although he would need a 0-powered creature at this point for me to be able to do anything. I think we're going to bug out here. Magic Online seems to be losing its mind. Can we keep going? Well, anyway, he actually, as it turns out, yeah, subs to the channel. So anyway, so what ends up happening is he assumes at some point that I'm going to go get Winter Orb off of Tezzeret, if I recall. And so anyway, what happens is next turn I play Tezzeret and I untap some mana sources, and I basically like sit there and nothing exciting's happening. He kills my commander, and he had thought I was going to get Winter Orb with Tezzeret, and I don't. On his turn, he plays the 4/7 that gives all his creatures +2/+2 and all mine -2/-2. And on my turn, I'm able to Treachery it and untap my cards, my lands. And then, more importantly, Ultimate Tezzeret. He was low enough in life, he'd take just a little bit of damage, and Tezzeret's Ultimate, was 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Plus, they all turned into 7/7s at that point. And yeah, I was able to just quickly go lethal without having to get control of the board at all. And that's something that's cool about Tezzeret. Tezzeret will just do that sometimes. Especially in this deck where your commander brings 2 additional artifacts and you can attack for 15 with just the commander alone. All right, and finally, I've got a game against Turbo Bird, who, if memory serves, is always a challenge, although he's bringing a Sphinx deck, so I don't know how much of a challenge this game is. More importantly, though, we get to see the old Lance Hacks back in action here. This is the deck exactly as I showed it to you when we started. So I don't have Gush anymore, but I get to do some pretty good stuff here. All right, so we're going to get tons of mana because land tax will get me cards, and I need mana to operate Scroll Rack if it's going to go active. And he plays a Vexing Sphinx, which means that he's going to be able to trade cards for, he's going to hit me for damage, trade cards away, and then get them all back, presumably. However, it doesn't trigger on Swords to Plowshares, so that has become my long-term game plan. All right, so now that I've taxed and set myself up with a crypt off that Trinket Mage, I'm going to post land tax. I'm going to go ahead and Vampiric Tutor for Scroll Rack. Hopefully the game doesn't completely bug out. I think somebody was telling me that Treachery causes replays to fail, and it would make sense. I did play Treachery in the last game. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and, despite how good Imperial Seal is with Scroll Rack, I go ahead and put it on top, but I shuffle it away. And the thought process here is that basically that could not be what I drew. Something's not right. Yeah, we are going to bug out. So basically, sorry that you don't get to see this game, but I put Imperial Seal back because with land tax and a draw phase, I'm seeing 4 cards per turn. So I don't really need to tutor with a, I don't really need to, like, there's nothing I need to go get. I'm already winning the game. And so I'm going to find everything I want to get anyway via Scroll Rack tax. And to sum it up for you, this game actually went a little bit long, but there's no beating tax rack, and you know he's able to get his commander down, and that happens. He gets a bunch of artifact mana, including Soul Ring and some other stuff. I end up getting Vandal Blast back into my hand later. I VB. He does he gets like a Fact or Fiction split off his commander, which I end up splitting it so he gets Lightning Greaves in one pile and a big creature and some other stuff. He plays this big creature and his Greaves. I remand the big creature back to his hand. Then I Vandal Blast his board. I Swords to Plowshares his Sphinx that he's been paying cumulative upkeep on. And from there he's left with just his commander and 4 islands. Meanwhile, I'm tax racking and I have exactly 3 lands in play. And but I'm getting tons of mana on the board. And well, you kind of know how it goes from there. It doesn't take too long before I'm able to Mind Twist his hand away, and I believe I was thinking about jacing his commander back and then twisting. Instead, I Mind Twist his hand away first, and then Yogg Will and Swords his commander or something like that, and take it out that way. So it was kind of it wasn't like crazy or anything, but it was just nice because it was a game I was hoping to run through so you could again see how wonderfully effective tax rack really is, and exactly why it's so good against the blue decks to have that combination of cards available to you. But we didn't get to see that, so so it goes. You can also see why I really like Gush and feel like if I could just figure out how to put it in the deck, I would. But to be honest, I don't see anything that I can cut at all. Like, everything in here has a purpose. Everything in here is very compact, and yeah, I don't see how to fit Gush into the deck. So if you have any ideas on that, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, I guess we'll just play Gushless tax and continue on as it is. Too bad Monastery Mentor didn't make the cut, but just one of those cards that just doesn't make any sense in here. It's a lot better in a Type 1 environment with Gitaxian Probes and Moxes and Lotus and all that good stuff. So, all right, that's all I've got. It's a long video, lots of challenging games. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.